Hi, this is Professor Moller. As you can see, I haven't shaved and it's not the best lighting. This was a really impromptu kind of thing, and it came from reading your assignments. And I realized there's a common misconception, or at least a partial, a partial truth. Maybe it's a better way of saying it. Um, Look at your announcements and make sure you read very closely the comments on your grade. Don't just look at the whole thing, but I made an announcement and everything else. Basically, you're going to get a second chance to fix your part of your assignment. Okay. Actually, in about a month, no, I'm sorry, 2 months, somewhere we think about 5 professional chefs are going to have a gumbo cook-off, and it's done. We're going to do it for charity. And it started out as a little bit of a joke. There's a diner I go to a lot of times, and he made gumbo one day, and it was terrible. And I said I could make better gumbo than him. And it's blossomed into him talking to other chefs in town. So I guess we have, I think he said, about a commitment of 4 or 5 people. I don't know if that includes him. And we're going to hopefully raise money for charity. But anyway, almost all the ones I've read so far are testing people using paper and pencil tests. First of all, questions like true or false, people have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. Okay, it's like flipping a coin. It doesn't prove anything. A lot of them are attitudes. Do you think you will learn and master this? How do they know? And even if they said they know, is it worthwhile? I used to do an experiment class where I'd walk around and I would drop a $50 bill out of my pocket on purpose, but not obviously. And then the question I talked about was how many people are honest, you know? And then anybody can be honest at if their life is going well, but what if their life isn't going well? What if nobody saw you steal that $50? The other night I was in the casino I go to, and I played my usual $10 blackjack, and the dealer made a mistake when she was counting my chips. She counted $25 higher than I had given her. So I'm a pretty honest person, and I told her. But anyway, getting back to the gumbo cook-off. You could put in front of me a paper and pencil test and says, does okra go in there? Does gumbo fillet? What color should the roux be? All those things. And I could get that perfectly right because I read the cookbook and I memorized it and I studied it and I saw demonstrations, etc. Doesn't mean I can make gumbo. Okay? Students were all conditioned to think of tests as being paper and pencil. Multiple choice, true, false, short answer, long answer, all kinds of things like that. They don't really prove anything other than you remember it up here. Doesn't mean you can do it. Many of you probably have heard of and read David Jonathan in your ID classes. Jonathan was a very close friend of mine, and we used to joke about things, and he would say he could do something. He goes, well, at least theoretically, I read it in a book, kind of deal. There's a whole other kind of test. It's called a performance test. Okay? If I'm teaching you a class on how to make gumbo, I could have you read all the stuff. I could demonstrate it for you and everything else. You could pass that paper and pencil test, but you might not be able to make gumbo. Okay? There's only one way I can tell that you can really make gumbo. Have you make it. It's called a performance test. Performance test is actually having somebody do the job. When I was getting my bachelor's degree, I originally started out and was a social worker for about 6-7 years. So social service, because I never got an MSW. And the test for me to graduate was a teacher played the role of a patient, and it was videotaped. And then we would critique the video afterwards, and he'd tell me I did wrong or right and things like that. That's a performance test. Paper and pencil tests are really good if it's important for people to remember facts, but it's not really good if you want to see somebody can really do a job. Okay? So when you're getting a lot of your projects back, in many cases, I want you to get rid of the mindset. I know it's not really your fault because for probably, 12, 16 years of schooling, you mostly were tested by paper and pencil tests. Paper and pencil tests are great. They can be automatically scored. The teacher can hand them off to somebody with a grading thing and they can check them off. They're lazy. from the teacher's perspective. I mean, to tell you the truth, it takes me a long time to read it. I read every project twice. I read every project once before I start grading, then I read it the second time. Sometimes, if I'm not sure, I read it the third time. Okay? Look how simpler my life would be if I had you put a Survey Monkey, a test on there, and it just gave me a score. Life would be much easier. I'd say I wouldn't have to work half as much as I do. Okay? So, performance test, though, is a demonstration of what somebody can do. Okay? So I want you to, when you look at your thing, if you're giving, if you're getting the option to redo it, and most of them has been criticisms of the L2s. Consider the idea of performance testing. If you don't know much about it, go do a little bit of reading. Okay, search on the internet for performance tests. A performance test is kind of like an L3. What's the person going to do on the job? Before you got your driver's license, they gave you a written test, and that was appropriate to make sure you knew what a stop sign was and what the speed limit was and blah, blah, blah. Okay? But before they get you on the wheel, they make you drive the car, right? When I did it, they didn't have those parking lot things. We actually drove in traffic. God knows how we didn't kill a lot of people, but we managed not to. I used an example before, and somebody, I think in the announcement, that, if you're in the Marine Corps or the police or anything else, you shoot at paper targets. That doesn't really mean anything when, you're shooting at somebody who could be shooting back at you. When you're not shooting at something that's standing still. A while back, that boat was captured, and the captain, hijacked, and the captain was some kind of light boat with 3 bad guys, and 3 Navy SEALs laid on the end of a ship for 24 hours straight. They never took a break. Their boat's bouncing up and down, the other one's bouncing up and down. Okay, they're not necessarily bouncing up and down at the same time. Yet, these guys were able to shoot 3 targets simultaneously. Okay? You can't practice that in a range. That's performance. Okay? In many of the special forces, in the intelligence community, they don't care what you can do on paper and pencil. They put you on the field. Some of the best training you've ever seen is in the sales training department, where they do simulations. I used to work for A.B. Dick a long time ago, and after they got done with the classroom training, they had taken apart the factory and they built offices, and then they wrote profiles, and they gave us all companies. I was the Moller Windmill Manufacturing Company, okay? And then I had, the date on my thing, and then somebody would knock on the door, and the rooms were all bugged and cameras, and they had to pretend to sell stuff, and we were told to give them certain types of, I never heard of your company, why would I want to buy your copier, or this or that, whatever they told us to say. And then after they got done doing that, they'd go back and meet with the sales trainer. Okay? Now, the paper and pencil test was a fact, so they know how to, what were the features of the different offset presses or copiers or things like that, how many copies it made, etc. But you can talk to people about sales, and they can write out the answers. But, a lot of it's body language, a lot of it is, there's many things that go into it, okay? So they did simulations as part of their training, and that was also their test, okay? So shake off the shackles you've had all your life where you were given pretty lousy tests in school and start thinking performance tests. Sorry about the quality of video. This was a very impromptu thing I read and felt that I had to say in reading your projects.